Do you guys have anything worthwhile planned for the rest of this week?
Just the Thanksgiving usual. It's my uh, wife and our new little baby's first uh, Thanksgiving, all like with the family in United States. So
That's nice.
that'll be fun.
I Thanksgiving is, even though Halloween is my favorite holiday, I think that's why God invented Walmart. Um, I think that Thanksgiving is really close up there. It's one of those that doesn't have its root in any specific faith or faith set of faith traditions. And it was during the Civil War, Abraham Lincoln presented to Congress this idea that was given to him by a woman who was a mother of one of the combatants who had been killed in the Civil War. And he got a lot of angry letters. But instead, this woman wrote and just said, in harsh times, that's when we need to feel grateful. And that's when we need to express our gratitude because it can change the tide of a downward spiral, essentially. And I've always liked that kind of story that, it didn't happen at the end of World War II when everybody was feeling like the world was just getting better and better. It happened during one of the darkest times of a nation's history when, brothers were shooting at brothers. And please remember your high value words that you've learned through this class so that when your drunk uncle attacks you and asks you what good is art in the real world, you can pull out 3-syllable words that really shock him to his core. That was one of my favorite characters that Chris Farley did because I think every family has one. Anyway, so this week we are not going to be doing any more reflections, weekly reflections. We only have 14. And there's a couple reasons for that. One is I want everybody to use this week and next week to finish getting everything done. And I am going through and grading stuff, trying to get everything graded that has been turned in by Thursday. Everybody's email proposing stuff that I've received has been evaluated, or the submission for the proposal for the final project. All of those, I responded to all the emails that I saw. There were about 4 or 5 people who, um, well, for whatever reason, the email was not getting through, and a couple of people called me on my cell phone and left a message, and several people texted. And I don't know. You can see that the video is kind of being a little bit jerky tonight. I don't know exactly why, but there are times when I check the email. I check my email every day, and there are times when I'll come to it and I'll realize there's stuff that's a week old that had never been opened because I hadn't seen it before. So I'm convinced it's has nothing to do with being my fault. I think it's the technology. So if you guys do have concerns and I'm not responding, please text me. And when you text me, include your name and which class you're in. All right. I also want to iterate that, yes, Ryan.
When is the last day that we can turn things in as we approach the end of the semester?
Last Friday. So you guys are out of luck. No,
Oh, great.
I'm kidding. That is weird. You must have some sort of prescience because I was just going to address that. I would really appreciate it if everything was turned in by December 8th. However, the real drop dead deadline for everything is December 13th, last Friday of finals, last day of finals. For your final assignment, I'm sorry, for the final for this class, if people don't turn it in, they can actually lose an entire letter grade or more. Um, Generally, I say that because the people that don't bother doing the final are also the people that don't bother turning in their stuff. And so they usually end up failing the class because they just don't care, which of course is none of you people. The final is really important. Sunday night, Monday morning, I'm going to release it and put it out there. And it consists of 4 essay questions with a minimum word count. And what you will need to do in order to get the full points for the final is answer each of the 4 questions and meet or exceed the minimum word count. That is really an important aspect of it. I've had students in the past before get really upset about their final grade. Well, I answered the questions, but if the final, if the word count is 125, 150 words on each answer, and you only submit 25 words for each answer, then it's going to be really hard to get all the points you want. So it's if you are overloaded during finals, and you're afraid you might not follow the parameters of the assignment or answer correctly or get all the points you want, best thing to do is to turn it in Monday afternoon or as soon as possible, because I will be grading them throughout the week whenever I see new ones showing up. And if you turn it in Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and there's points that are missing, you do have an opportunity to resubmit it. If you turn it in at Friday at 11:55 p.m., you don't have an opportunity to do that. So once again, all the weekly reflections, all the projects, everything else, the drop dead deadline is Friday the 13th at midnight. All right? And I do that again. I realize if you guys had normal lives, if you were normal people, you would be taking a normal class. Instead, you're taking my class. So that tells me something about you right there. And it's important for me to be as flexible as possible, because my job is not to put to staple a great big "I suck" sticker on your forehead. It's to do everything I can to help you succeed. Yes, Ryan.
Speaking of succeeding, what kind of upper division classes are you going to have in the future?
I really don't know. We're looking at a a traditional processes class, and we're looking at a glass class. I don't know how far out those are in development. I don't know exactly what they want to do with them, so we'll see. And I was also asked to consider a assemblage class, but I don't think that's going to happen. So I think it may just be different kinds of 3,000 and 4,000 level art history stuff, which I don't mind. I like doing that. I One of the most terrifying classes I've taught was on gender and art. That is the worst class that anybody can teach at a university in a conservative state system. And it's not because of what the material that's covered, it's because of what all the parents and everybody else thinks is covered. And it ended up being, there was a person who was very conservative in the class that really appreciated my sensitivity. And there was a person who was very liberal in the class that really appreciated the things that we talked about. So it was, that was an awful lot of fun. Ended up going, thinking about it, I was sick for a week before the class started, but it ended up being a really good experience. Both of you guys in the art program?
Yeah, I'm doing painting, drawing, illustration, and hoping to get into BFA.
Nice. How about you, America?
I'm in the same emphasis, painting, drawing, and illustration.
Well, I will tell you, the painting, drafting, and illustration people at this university are among the best. They are functioning professionals. Like McGarren is doing really well with collectors in other states and things, but from what he does, you have the Jesus painter. What's his name?
Del Parson?
Yeah, he is incredibly brilliant. He knows his craft better than most people who make a living doing the same kind of stuff that he does, and it's just because he's really brilliant. So the teachers here are among the very best that you can get, regardless of where you go. Considering the fact that one of the students did classical oil painting under Del Parson, and McGarren last year got into a national show, exhibit over in Washington, D.C. And out of everybody in the country, he got third place. And that's from Utah Tech. So, I mean, it does not suck here. Really very cool. There's something I wanted to mention too that I mentioned with another class in another class last week, and I wanted. We're being recorded now, and I think it is a really important message to have. Dean Jarvis, who is over the art department, is an exceptional individual. At his core, he may not understand exactly what the different students are doing because he's not an expert in all the different artistic fields that are in this college. However, he does really know that students need everything they can. He is a real co-collaborator for your success. And it's important that everybody knows that, particularly since a couple of the things that have been in the news the last couple of weeks about a previous president of the university and the concerns that the school has about the families and other people involved with this. I think it is really important that you guys, that all the students appreciate. We are here, the university in general, but especially the art department. We are here to do whatever we can to help you guys be successful, whatever that term means for you in your career moving forward. The students really are the most important. We realize there's a lot of non-traditional students. There's a lot of people that have jobs, odd, weird, interesting schedules, and we do everything we can to help. I've a friend of mine is the head custodial over at the North Commons building, and he said that the last couple of years is he's been doing what he does for decades. And he said the last year or two on Utah campus there, he has seen the happiest students he's ever seen, in the last 20 years. And I think that says an awful lot about the caliber of people that come to this university and the caliber of people like Dean Jarvis and Alex and all the administrators and the teachers, the professors as well. And Title IX is a really important thing. And it's really what I see at this university that I haven't always experienced is people, administrators and teachers and staff take the responsibility seriously, not because they'll be fired otherwise, but because they genuinely feel it's important, which I think is pretty cool. Anyway, so going on, I did want to talk a little bit about, or revisit the end of the semester, look over everything, excuse me, everything that's due, and turn in everything you possibly can. A friend of mine, excuse me, one of the students was getting a really bad grade. It was 2020. Both of his parents had been hit by COVID pretty hard, and he was their caregiver, primary caregiver. He had fallen behind in school. And just by talking to me about a situation, he was able to turn in things. In a week and a half, he turned his grade around from getting, a D minus minus to an A minus. And it was just by turning stuff in and responding quickly to the critiques that I offered. So there's no reason for you not to get an A in this class unless you work hard not to. So some of the things that I've noticed regarding projects. Yes, Ryan.
I remember you were saying that there was extra credit available, and in 2710, like for instance, you said if we watched the movie Hero, we could write about that and get extra credit. Is any of that still on the table?
I think if you guys want to do that, that'd be just fine. And for that kind of a thing, how can we turn it in? Because what I can do is let me think about how we can turn that in, because I'd also mentioned for this class that you could get extra credit by watching Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan. And you know, if you watch those movies, you need to be able to articulate why it fits with the class, and then do a full critique, applying the 4 tools of artistic critique to them. And you can do that either written or um, video, like we talked about last week. And I think that's really good, Ryan. What I'm going to do then is I will do an assignment attached to the final block for both sections where we talk about that. And if people want to do it, that'll give them some extra points. And I think I will put it under the weekly reflection thing, so it doesn't count as a weekly reflection. But if you do it, it will add points to your weekly reflection things. Does that sound good to you, America? Okay. Yeah, I think we can do that. Let me. Oh, I'm gonna thank you, Ryan, for saying that, because nobody's taken me up on it, and I think it would be really nice. So I will do extra credit weekly reflection number 15, and it will be for this class. It's Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan. Does anybody remember why? Oh, come on. Because Captain Kirk wins through thinking in 3D, extra dimensionally. And it has an awful lot of oh, who wrote Moby Dick? Because it has a lot of references to Moby Dick and Shakespeare. It really beautifully conceived movie. I really liked Tom Hardy in Nemesis too, so that's something else to consider, but probably not for this class. We'll probably do that. Did you know that he was in Nemesis? Star Trek Nemesis? He was a young clone of Captain Picard. Anyway, I'm so disappointed. You guys are Americans. This is the kind of stuff that is fundamental to your education, not only as world citizens, but as Americans. So my heart hurts a little that you guys don't know this stuff. It's just so disappointing. All right, now that we've really embraced the awkwardness, let's go on. For the projects, I wanted to talk about a couple of things that are really important. And this is why people are missing points. One is all the weekly reflections everything has to be related to this class appropriately, which means that all the weekly reflections have to be related directly to what we looked at in that week's module. All the projects need to be specifically related to art and architecture in this class, which covers the time period between 1350 and today. I have had people do fantastic projects about ancient Egyptian temples for this class that is Renaissance to contemporary art. That's not going to work. And a couple of people who are taking both classes have turned in incorrect weekly reflections, and no big deal, because you just get the right one and turn it in the right spot. It's not that big of a deal. And in those projects that are related to this class, there is something that needs to be followed. Okay, I'm back. How much did you miss? What was the last thing I said?
What needs to be followed?
Okay. What needs to be followed for the projects is that the introduction has to tie directly into the class. You have to be able to communicate what you're doing that justifies the hour expenditure of the project. Now, I am going to give an example This person turned in a stellar project. The first iteration was a short little paragraph and an image of a sandwich. It was just like a couple sentences. It said, well, olive oil is important, so I made a sandwich. That doesn't count. And I explained what was going on. They were kind of confused. So we talked about it. They ended up demonstrating that one of the reasons we know about ancient Greek art is because of the amphorae that were salvaged from wrecks that held olive oil. Olive oil was very important. And they were able to demonstrate that that was a big theme of art. That was a big reason for art production. So, what can we do with oil today? So, well, it's a consumable. And they were able to demonstrate that making a sandwich with olive oil was directly related to art of ancient Greece. And then they showed a sequence or photo sequence of them making the sandwich. And their conclusion was, this helps us to relate to these people that lived 2,000 years ago, because it's still something that we use and consume. And it's a big part of food today. And so it was a beautiful project. All the citations were, in the original thing, there was no citations. In this, there were citations regarding olive oil in ancient Greece and depictions of art in ancient Greece that dealt with olive oil and all sorts. And it was, what's the myth behind, what are the myths behind olive oil? Why it's so important? And it was just really beautifully done. And that's the real big difference, being able to demonstrate how this works. America just did an annotated bibliography where every single one, she started with an introduction that tied it in directly to the class. Each of the 5 citations were done MLA standard. Each of them included the accessed on phrase at the end, accessed on the date phrase at the end. And each of them had 2 paragraphs. The first paragraph being a summary of the information in the source cited, and then the second paragraph being a reflection on what she learned in that source cited. So it was beautiful, really nicely done, and that's the kind of thing to be watching out for. If you're not getting points, that's one of the big reasons. Another is sometimes the file will be incorrect or it won't work. PowerPoint allows you to attach a audio file to specific slides. That doesn't always work coming through Canvas. The best thing to do is to have your PowerPoint slides on your computer, do a Teams meeting with yourself, and record the interaction while you are giving a voiceover. Do a screen share of your PowerPoint slides, do the voiceover. That works really, really well. And sometimes when people will submit something, they'll submit it through their phone, or they'll submit it so that the file is with the problem with submitting through the phone is that it gives some really interesting file formats, but it also makes it so that most of the time the default is set at permission required, which means that I can't access the submission. And and until that's fixed, I can't give a grade. But there have been a few students who they've tried like a couple different things. We couldn't get the file. And one of them just turned around. They found an online file format changer and was able to get their video files correct. And that worked. Another problem that people will have is sometimes the link that you put in is an internal personal computer system link, which means it's a link that will only work if I have access to your personal computer. And it's going to say something at the end like webmap is the file format name, something like that, or web MP, something like that. And that's not going to work either. So if the points aren't there, check and see if I've said anything about the format, and we'll figure that out and get it working. A couple other things is we talked about the introduction so that it ties in. The project itself needs to demonstrate the expenditure of time, and so if your annotated bibliography doesn't have a lot of points, and it's because you've just included website addresses and then a sentence, that's not going to really demonstrate that you followed the assignment. The assignment is requiring specific format of citations, specific order of doing things. And as soon as you're able to take care of that and turn around and resubmit it, then you can get a better grade. Some of the silly things that cause people to lose points is not alphabetizing their sources in either an annotated bibliography or a citations list or works cited page. That's a simple thing to take care of. Not alphabetizing correctly can be a problem. I really recommend the 10 different citation generating programs, websites that I gave to people in the assignment descriptions. But even those sometimes will look at names incorrectly. So, for example, if your citation is, say, Dr. Kim Salinger, the correct way to cite that name as the author is Salinger, comma, Dr. Kim. And I think that a lot of the times it will say like Kim Salinger, comma, doctor is what some of these programs will do. And that's not correct. So, watch out for those kinds of things. If you have any doubts, there's a writing resource on campus. They are pretty busy right now, but most of the time they can answer little questions really quickly and help quite a bit. And then another one is putting the website link instead of the MLA format citation. The website link does not do it. You don't even need a website link. You can put that in there at the end of the citation before the accessed on date if you want to, but you don't have to. You do need to have the information there, so I can plug it in, or anybody in the future can plug it in. And then, do you remember why we have the accessed on date? Even if something is missing from the internet, it is still there. And you go to something like the Wayback Machine or archive.net and plug that in with the date that it was accessed on. And even if the website is no longer functioning, it will pull up what that thing cites. It's really pretty amazing. So think about that. If you do want to include the link, if you're going to do a hyperlink, make sure that you do the exact same format for every single citation. And again, at the very end, you have that accessed on phrase, and accessed on specifically is the date that you accessed that particular information. I have had people say accessed on Google Images or Wikimedia. You don't need to do that. You don't need to cite public use imagery like that necessarily. We're looking for citations for like YouTube videos and articles and books and stuff like that you access online. Does that make sense, those things, for everybody? All right, super duper. Excuse me. Okay, we're gonna look at, this is the 5th research project. Both of you guys submitted one of these. I want to look at them, and if we can pull them up, I'd like you guys, you don't have to tell us, you don't have to read whatever it is you did. I would just like you to talk about how you decided on the project, what kinds of things you did to get the information together, and what you came away thinking about it. Okay, so this is Ryan's. Hopefully it will finish loading pretty soon. Ideally, we're almost there. Oh, okay. This can be a problem. What that just means is I just need to download it, and as soon as it downloads, then we can look at it. So I'm going to open it up. There we go. And I'm going to share it. One thing I would recommend is that several people have submitted docx programs or docx formats. That is not necessarily a bad thing, but I want you to consider something. Anybody can edit a docx program. It's not that big of a deal. But if you submit it as a PDF, it becomes a lot harder to edit. And there is a copyright validation for creative people, which, since we're all artists, we count as that, where it is called first publication. This is when this is something that is a convention that allows artists to get credit for an informal copyright when they have a record of the first time their artwork is displayed. And for creatives like us, as we do this kind of thing, if you have a website, if you're concerned about this, if you have a website or anything like this, you can publish it to that. It needs to be a public domain kind of space. So if you're in the future, as you're doing artwork and things like that, have an Instagram page because that will protect you from anybody trying to steal your work. Okay, we have photos. And this kind of essay requires 8 images in it.
Oops.
That's not a big deal. If you can just go through, find similar things to put in to pad it a little bit if you want, but this kind of thing requires 8 images, unless. Well, let's talk about what were you trying to do with this? Were you making photography that readdressed or revisioned the Hudson River School?
Maybe as like a tertiary topic. I guess the big message that I was going for is that I was getting frustrated in my photography because I felt like it didn't capture scale in the way that the Hudson River School paintings did. And so I went into a deeper dive on the history of the Hudson River School, why it was so successful, and how it helped shape American culture.
Okay. Do you have a photo which does demonstrate that you were able to work on scale, or that you feel is successful? Because what I would recommend, this sounds more like a discovery project rather than a research project, because you're working on it with relation to your own photography. If you have taken any landscape photography this semester and you put that image out at the very end of this and just say, this is how it relates to Hudson River School, this is what I was trying to do, and it failed or succeeded, that's it. That's all you need, because then it
Well,
becomes a
that first
discovery
photo on the
project.
top was mine, and it's even signed in the bottom right corner.
Okay, but then I would recommend doing that at the bottom of it. Was it done something that you photographed this semester?
No,
Okay.
that's a portfolio shot that it's one of my best photos, but yeah, it's not from this semester.
Okay. So for this to be a discovery project, it needs to be from this semester. But what you can do is find four more photos, a similar vein, that address these kind of issues and stick them in there, and then it becomes a finished research paper. It's just fine. It just needs 8 photos is all.
Okay.
One of the problems with this is you are doing a beautiful job formatting it within the paper itself. A couple people just dragged and dropped photos instead of using the insert function, and what that translates to is that Word will stack the photos. So when you see it and you don't have editing permission, you just see rims of all the previous photos underneath the one that's on top, and that won't count either. But what you've done is really nicely done. So
Well, I actually see an error right here on your screen that I tried to format because I actually wrote this in Pages and exported it to Word. Just that's what's easiest for me with what I have in my workflow.
okay,
But Yeah, I mean, it didn't look too terribly bad, but that one that you had down there looks like it's out of place. See how it looks like it's in the middle of a paragraph? So that
Right.
must be an exporting error. It didn't look like that when I exported it, but that looked like that's how it did export. So,
Well, and that's not an issue. Um,
okay.
what you've done is really beautiful. What is an issue is when somebody says, "Oh yeah, I need some more photos." They just drag and drop them into the document, and all you see is like a little quarter inch on the side because they're all stacked on top of each other. So this is great. Yeah, if you can find four more. Now, Maxfield Parrish is not technically a Hudson River School painter, but a lot of his landscapes fit in, and it kind of demonstrates he's doing the same kind of thing that you're doing, looking at the Hudson River School and using that to kind of inform how he creates his paintings. Yeah, his landscapes are ridiculously magical. They're really amazing. I think this is really good. Fix that, resubmit it. We're good. That's great.
If I did go and grab a landscape photo and tried to process it in the style of a Hudson River School kind of painting, could I just do that one, and would it be
Yeah, yeah, and
considered
that would make it count as a discovery project. And you would just need to say what I learned from the Hudson River School. What are these things? And I tried to apply it to this, and you can compare that to the first photo and see that it's different.
okay?
So you just write a few sentences to tie that in. Then it becomes a discovery project.
Okay.
So yeah, that'd be great. Does that make sense? Okay. I'm sorry, I couldn't see. Does that make sense to you guys? Okay. All right, good. Okay, now I'm going to show one of America's projects. So I'm looking at this, and one of the things that she did that I really appreciate is this is a really solid um, introduction because it ties into the class. We're talking about impressionism, and then she talks about critiques called the newly introduced style incomplete and messy, and then it looks like she was trying to do this in that style. So, America, tell us a little bit about this project. I'm sorry, I can't hear you at all. Yeah, the microphone is still off. America, can you hear me?
I had my mic off. So what I did with in this project was that I took one of the photos that I'd taken recently during the semester while I was out,
Right here.
and yeah, that one. And I tried using just plain acrylics and just using like colors. So if I remember correctly, in Impressionism, they didn't mix the colors with black or white. They didn't make many tints or shades. They mixed them with each other, so they would mix those primary colors together. And I tried doing that as accurate as I could with the colors, but some of them I just could not get. So the blue that I had, it was much more deeper, but the blue in the photograph, it's a bit more towards cyan. I just didn't have that on hand, and I couldn't make that color.
I think this turned out really beautifully. Um, the only thing that I would suggest including is a citation of some sort. And just to reference how you made the decisions you did, identifying that as impressionist decisions. And that could be as easily done as finding on YouTube one of those things that we watched about impressionism, where somebody just describes this is what impressionism is, and then citing that YouTube video at the very end. And that would be all that you'd need to do. I think that turned out really nicely done, very nicely done. I really like the photo, and I love this side-by-side comparison, because this does feel very much like some of that 19th century early impressionist work. So well done. Okay. I want to do the same. Are you guys comfortable with me doing the same thing with 2 more projects? Is that okay? Okay. Because one thing that I'm really loving about this, and I don't use that word incredibly lightly, is that you guys get what's going on. Like Ryan, you are dissecting the Hudson River School and applying it to your own landscape photography. Which that's so much better than memorizing, a half a dozen paintings that somebody did 200 years ago. And then in America, you analyzed what Impressionism does as part of the routine to get that style, and you're applying it to your own landscape photography. I think both of those projects are really well done. I mean, you're applying it to your painting from your landscape photography. I think that turned out really well.
Well, something that I really appreciate about these discovery projects is I don't have all of mine in, but this is my first semester as an art student. I got a history degree like over a decade ago, and I switched over from pre-med to here when I, thought that life was too short. And so I feel like my portfolio is so much shorter than what a lot of other students have. And I feel like it's a good chance, for me to really, get the time to dedicate to some of these projects and, start building up something where I felt like I'm kind of lacking compared to other students.
Well, one thing that I appreciate that, no doubt, but something that I appreciate even more is that you're applying your skills of observation, the tools of artistic critique, so that you're not just replicating something. You, like America just articulated, you can talk about why, what's going on, and that gives whatever work you guys do a significantly greater amount of depth, because not if somebody challenges you, but when you discuss it, you have the articulation of vocabulary and the knowledge to really explain what's going on. And I love that you're using the projects to expand your own portfolio, but I think I'm more impressed with you guys actually get what's going on in the art because you're studying it and you're discovering that. Last semester, somebody did a project with Mark Rothko painting, where we had talked about his color field paintings were meditative response to the post-World War social trauma that was just ever present and ubiquitous, which is, people knew about the Pinko Commie Scare. People were terrified about another world war. People were terrified about the nuclear bomb. I mean, little kids were watching in preschool things about duck and cover, in case there's a mushroom cloud, duck and cover, and there's, a 0.1 billion% that you might survive kind of thing. And Jackson Pollock addressed that by getting out all that frustration, putting it and sharing that frustration. It was organized and saying he made friends with several Dene families, and it was organized as kind of a contemporary take on the shooting chant, Dene spiritualism. And then Mark Rothko went the other extreme, where he wanted to give people a platform to find calm in the middle of all this terror. And so, we talked about that. And her project was, she found a Mark Rothko painting that she really liked, and they got a color projector, found what the size was, and projected it in a room where she turned off all the lights except only this paint, so you can only see this painting. And she projected it the exact size that he had painted it. And she just sat there for like an hour just looking at it. And it ended up being a discovery project that was where she discovered a transcendence that she had not even expected, because Mark Rothko was originally one of those painters that she could not stomach. So I thought that's hearing stuff like that and what you guys are doing is always exciting to me. All right, so Ryan, if you don't mind, tell us about um, what's going on with this project, because we didn't really talk a lot about John Singer Sargent specifically, but the idea of copying a masterwork is a thing that is very specific to art training.
Well, I, submitted for my final project proposition that I would do a digital copy of a masterwork. So, I thought I should kind of help prepare myself for that. This is a, physical attempt at copying a masterwork. And I think it turned out okay for my first one. So I think Sargent is a beautiful painter. He's kind of with in my limited scope of knowledge, he's kind of at the forefront of who I like to see. And I found a portrait that I liked, and it was semi-similar to one that I had tried to do a few years ago. I tried to do a charcoal copy of a photo, and it didn't work out, but it was actually a British officer like this. And it's probably still in one of my notebooks somewhere. It didn't turn out very good, but yeah, I thought it'd be a fun project to do to see how far I've come, and I think it shows. I did all right.
One thing that's interesting to me is looking at this. This is the new one you did, right?
Well, that's unfinished, but yes.
Okay, but just even the unfinished one, and then comparing it to this, it's very apparent to me that you are applying a lot of knowledge that you didn't necessarily have when you did this.
Well,
That I
that's
mean,
actually just a value study, and it's in the bottom right corner of this right here.
okay.
So
All right, so you don't have a photo of the original thing. This is just a value study. Okay, cool. Yeah, I
I
think
worked
it
on
turned
it
out really
upside
well.
down, and I wrote a
Good.
little something about. So I was told a long time ago in kind of a art sort of workshop circle thing that if you work on your pieces when they're upside down, that you have a better time seeing the shapes for what they are. Your mind's
Yeah.
not cluttered by saying like, "Hey, these are eyes." And I also recalled reading something about the Hockney Falco thesis about how if these old masters were using primitive lenses to project photographic images onto a wall and draw them, they would have been upside down. And it made me wonder if that artistic tradition is kind of, leaked down from that era.
That'd be a really interesting thing to explore. Oh, I like that. That turned out really cool.
Thank you.
Yeah, one of the things we talked about in regards to the big leap between romanticism and realism and then impressionism is that artists were no longer trying to show things as everybody else expected them to be, but they were trying to show things as they saw them. And what cripples a lot of people who are trying to do art is that they can't get out of the meaning of the symbols that they see. And you can really see this in the progression of art from children to young adults. A child interacts with just the miracle and wonder of being able to have the power to make something. And so a lot of early creative endeavors is basically scribbles on everything, because they don't care about what the thing is or what it looks like. What they're experiencing is the power of making a mark while they're thinking about something or while they're just enjoying the mark making. It's kind of entrancing to watch a very young child the first time they realize that they're the ones that are making that blue mark on the wall, there's a little bit of forgiveness that should open up from the parents' perspective. The next step is children will record how they interact with the objects around them. And so that's why you'll see human beings with things like the expressive features shown out of scale, as well as the manipulative features or the manipulating features showing out of scale. So you'll see like a long arm or 12 fingers on a hand. It's not because a child is trying to uncanny valley freak you out. It's because that's what they interact with. That's what's important to them. And then later on, a young person starts realizing that there are symbols that other people that can be shared with other people. And so they start developing imagery that for them feels like it's more acceptable and accessible to other people. And they follow conventions that they see in like cartoons and different stuff like that. When people talk about art, nobody is talking about the 14 shades of brown used in somebody's hair. They're talking about the hair. And so there's this kind of conventional um, way that children will draw, where you can see what they're drawing, you can recognize it because the symbols are shared, but they're still identifying with the symbols that they have in their heads. They're not drawing an ear; they're drawing a loop that represents what the ear does, for example. And when you are doing something upside down, what you're seeing, especially after you do a value study like what you did, what you're seeing is those shapes, and it's a lot easier for your mind to step away from the symbol value that those shapes are related to. We all know, big foam finger air quotes, what a nose should look like because we're familiar with its function and what it represents. But it becomes very difficult to draw a realistic nose because our bodies aren't made with lines everywhere. What you're drawing is the intersection of different planes of light. And so I think it's brilliant when you can do drawings and work upside down. That really helps you to step away from those symbols that your brain is romantically attached to. And it's interesting to me that symbolism in art, to be a professional artist, to be really valued, you really needed to be able to create stuff up until about 1840 that everybody else could recognize because you were sharing the same kind of visual symbols. And it wasn't until the Renaissance, or I mean, sorry, the Impressionists, with really cheap paint and the permission that they gave themselves to screw up monumentally, that people went back to, well, I want to show people what I'm seeing, not what they expect to see. And so it's kind of interesting how that's come full circle, because you look at, like, especially the Favis later. Um, you look at what they're doing. They're exploring that fundamental joy of creation that babies have when they first pick up a blue crayon. They're just playing with color. They're playing with the emotions associated with color and the colors associated with emotions. So they're really being kind of naked in demonstrating what they're feeling about the stuff that they're looking at. And they are also kind of creating an environment that is intended to be enjoyable for the viewer to embrace, because they're giving you permission to explore those childhood symbols as well. And I think that's kind of fun to be aware of that. Sorry, I didn't mean to launch off, but okay. So we looked at Ryan's. Now, America, would it be okay if we looked at your pop art project? Okay. Okay, here we go. I think art is a lot more fun when you kind of start embracing the context behind it and why people make the choices that they did and do, I think that can make it a lot more enjoyable. All right, America, can you tell us a little bit about what your project represents?
So for my project, I went a bit more personal on this one. As popper, it's mostly focused on pop culture, and so a media that I chose from current pop culture was a comic from My Little Pony: Friendship is Magic. As that one's my favorite, but it's also really popular, and I figured that I could do it in the style of pop art, as well as mix in some aspects from Lichtenstein's Reflections paintings, because I felt like it fit the context of the comic as well. I have the paintings right here. They're not showing.
Oh, they're not sure. Okay. Are the paintings on the?
They're
Okay.
they're on the file as well, but I also have them here in case.
Okay. All right. Yeah, right here. How many paintings did you do? Oh, it looks like two.
I just did two.
It is interesting to me to see the different choices you've made, knowing that you're looking at Roy Lichtenstein as well, because it's pretty obvious that you are. I think that's really fascinating to me. What about this is the Roy Lichtenstein influence?
So the influence was the marks on it, because I noticed that the context of his paintings, they have something to do with reflecting on a non on something. It's not just it's not, the bars aren't just meant to be like an actual reflection, like a representation. They're also signifying like the subject of the painting reflecting on something that's going on. Like there was one where there was a girl and she was reflecting on her love life, and that one, and I felt like I could do it with this one, because in the context of this comic, it was the same idea where the characters were reflecting on something important to themselves.
Yeah, I think that turned out really well. Because Roy Lichtenstein, you know, a lot of people dismiss him because he has the word balloons, or the automatopoeia balloons, and it's funny to me because for him those became a graphic element of the painting itself, and I see you doing that same kind of thing, and I like these diagonal parallel lines, which is in advertising and marketing a trope for that kind of reflective surface. How long did it take you to do this?
I severely underestimated the time. They both took more than 10 hours. I was working on them for an entire week.
Okay, so you're going to do a third one then?
It was fun,
I'm
so
joking
maybe
because
in
I'm
the future. It was fun. It took a while, but it was fun, so maybe.
What about the My Little Pony stuff fit in with the pop art kind of thing or theme?
So it was really popular within the past decade. Like it was pretty much everywhere, especially in like the mid 2010s, and it's still pretty relevant, especially with like a new generation showing up, like a new series. This one was the series that lasted for almost a decade. The one that's going on right now is a different one. But this one, the one that I focused on, it's still really popular within the internet.
All right, very cool. I like that. And with the pop artists, it's a lot of it is about it's a fusion between the perspectives of Wassily Kandinsky about the artist as prophet and very contemporary, what is happening now culture. And so I really appreciate that. Did I talked about Wassily Kandinsky last time, didn't I? Okay. So do you remember why he or what elements he was referring to when he talks about the artist as prophet? He's talking about the prophet both as the diagnostic of the culture as well as the extrapolator of a culture. So he's talking about what's going on now and what could happen in the future. And I think this very definitely ties in with Wassily Kandinsky on the diagnostic aspect of the artist as prophet. So very cool. And it's what's so intriguing to me is that it has nothing to do with telling you what to think. It's inviting you to embrace a perspective and to expand your thinking. It's not telling you what to think, and I really appreciate that quite a bit. I think good art rarely keeps you from thinking. I think there's always you look at Del Parsons and it's pretty straightforward. This is a painting of Jesus, but then you look at it a little bit longer and you start asking yourself, well, why is he doing this? You know, this is what the story is. What aspect of the story is he taking in this image? Who are the people he's used as models? Why is the clothing this color? You know, all that stuff Bill Parsons does, and a lot of it is completely subliminal. He can articulate quite a bit of it, but he's been doing it for so long and he's so good at it that a lot of it there's just no reason for him to articulate it because it's there. And I really love that kind of aspect where it's not straightforward imagery, it's illustration with an invitation to explore it. I think that's an awful lot of fun. Eric Carle is really good about doing that as well, and he did a whole series of books. All of you know Hungry Caterpillar. Eric Carle would do these illustrations where he would do different kinds of printing and stamp printing, figure painting, all sorts of stuff. Then he would make collages using those paintings that he had made and doing it in a very pop art style that really puts him up there. He's almost entirely dismissed as an artist because he only did children's books, but the perspective and thought behind it, the color usage, the science of color is absolutely amazing to me. That'd be kind of fun to, as one of your, if anybody still has a project to do, it'd be kind of fun to dissect Eric Carle's Hungry Caterpillar and that whole series and talk about it in the context of contemporary art. I think we'd probably only appreciate it in this class. I think nobody else would really like it. Too bad. Genius is rarely fully celebrated during the life of the genius. So, as I know all too well, nobody appreciates me. Do you guys have any further questions? This is about all that I can do. I'm going to wind up pretty soon here, so it's a fairly short evening. And I really appreciate you guys being here today. I know it's a Tuesday. You're getting ready for Thanksgiving. You have a lot on your plate, and I'm very grateful. Thank you for showing up. Do you guys have any questions or observations about the stuff that we've already looked at or the projects that are done? Anybody? Okay. Remember, I'd like everything to be done by December 8th, but the drop dead deadline is December 13th. All right, so remember that. And if there are any issues or anything and you need to turn stuff in later, let me know what's going on because I think we could probably figure something out. But I really need everybody because we do have a hard deadline specific to engagements with scholarship and funding for schooling. That's the date that we've got to stick to. So, all right. I am so grateful you guys are in this class, and I'm so grateful that you guys are really getting the stuff that we're, smelling what I step in, as they say. I'm really grateful that you guys are getting the artsy fartsy stuff that we're looking at. Oh, did I talk about the final? 4 questions? Okay. All right. I will release that like Sunday at midnight is when that'll be released. And then everybody can do it and get it turned in by Friday at midnight. All right, folks. You have an absolutely wonderful Thanksgiving week, and do not get hay fever or don't get a cold. Use your three, everybody at Thanksgiving. I look forward to seeing you next week.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Welcome. And we'll see you